Welcome to Cancer and Peace. I'm back with my good friend and buddy, Peter Scalzo, who are our host. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm going to facilitate a conversation where we started on our last episode. We started connecting the cycle of grief, or this 5 known, highly accepted components of grief, the grief cycle as known, with recovery principles and how it kind of impacts with a cancer journey. Mm-hmm. And so last time was denial, and we're going to kick into the next item in the grief cycle. And I say cycle, and there's a lot of everybody say, hey, this is not a linear process necessarily. And so you may skip one of these. And so we're not trying to make this linear, but we want to talk about anger today and that experience of anger. And I think for many of us, when we hear that, it's like, it's not okay to be angry.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go right to you. It's like, hey, how do you feel about that? And are you angry today?
Well, I do think denial, and we talked about this, is the starting point for going into a cancer journey. It's important to just recognize the reality of what's happening. And so I think it is important. And I think we talked about that, denial being one bookend, acceptance being the other bookend. But so anger for me.
Yeah, I'll add one more piece to that too.
You want to,
the way I think about it, and I'm not, doesn't make it right, but the way I think about it is, I think you do process in some ways linearly, but maybe it's that you're taking layers of this. In other words, you're not, people talk about, well, you may go back to anger, you may go back to bargaining, you may go back to depression. And I think that's true. But I think what happens, at least from my own personal experiences, once I've come to acceptance for the area, I generally don't go back and try to and have to reprocess it, even though you could. I'm not saying that's not, but I think what happens is there's a new layer of it though that I need to walk through the cycle of grief or the recovery principles. And so what we do in a recovery environment is we go through the 12 steps over again, or the 8 principles. We walk through them again because we recognize that part of the recovery journey or the healing journey is it's a layered approach that you keep approaching the next layer that's in front of you in your life. And I think in the grief processing stages, when you've processed something and come to acceptance, it really does mean that you've decided to move on, but that doesn't mean that all the layers that were there are done. And so you may come back to anger, but that's the way I think about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think, in my own journey, denial, let's just say, so I'm initially diagnosed with high-grade cancer, and I have 10 years of high-grade cancer. I couldn't go to the fact that this was a life-threatening cancer, even though it was. I did not allow myself to go to that place until the 10th year, 14th surgery, when I was forced to go to that place. So that was kind of like another layer of sort of penetrating denial and getting through it to the reality that, yes, this is a life-threatening cancer. I think that's right. There are layers to this.
So the big question, if we're going to talk about anger today for you as our host, you're on the hot seat. When did you first experience anger? Why did you experience anger? What was it? What was, or did this happen? Maybe I'm implying something.
I think for me, anger is one of those emotions that I have to go back to my family of origin with. And I have to look at the way we handled anger growing up. And I know anger was one of those sort of misunderstood emotions in my home. Anger actually scared me. Like I didn't like it. I didn't feel safe when someone was expressing anger. It was kind of like stuff and then let it out, and it was kind of like a violent, not physically, but I'm just saying there were strong emotions, anger, and I was a sensitive little guy, and I didn't like to see the emotion of anger. It overwhelmed me. It made me feel scared, again, and so I veered away from it, and I tried to stuff it. And even though I felt anger, I didn't really deal with it. I didn't think anger was one of those emotions you could safely express. So
You didn't view it as a healthy emotion?
No, not at all.
So do you share that today? Is it a healthy emotion?
No. Yeah. So even today, course, I've lived a little bit. I've looked at scriptures, and I see now that, even the scripture says, be angry and yet do not sin. And there is a part where the anger man does not achieve the righteousness of God, but that anger can be a healthy emotion that God wants to communicate at times through anger. But I didn't like uncontrolled anger. That's what I struggled with.
Well, that's an interesting word, uncontrolled anger.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking about this, because I think that's a great place to start. Is there a healthy place for anger? Because I think a lot of time we'll be in recovery and we'll hear somebody say, I struggle with anger. And it's almost as if anger itself is a bad thing. And I don't think that's the message that I would say today. One of the things I think we talk about Pete Scazzero's work a lot in emotionally healthy relationships. And in that particular work that he has, because he has an emotionally healthy relationships course that he does. And the last one is how to fight cleanly. And I think it's such an interesting point because we tend to act like, hey, if we, I heard Adam Young talk about this a while back. It's like, if you don't have conflict in your marriage, you probably don't have a good marriage, which is a fascinating comment for him to make as a counselor. And the point that he was making wasn't that you should be fighting all the time, is that if you don't have conflict, it's more than likely you're just conflict avoidant. And there's a lot of unmanaged stuff sitting at the bottom. It doesn't necessarily represent a good marriage. And I think that Scazzero picked up that work and was like, not picked up his work, but he has his own version that's like, you are going to have arguments and fights in human relationships. And that's because we wrong each other, and anger should represent something that says something is wrong here and it needs to be addressed. And I think if the moment we recognize this, okay, it doesn't mean that the way we address it is always good, but it should be as an emotion, a signal that something is wrong here and it needs to be examined and addressed. How does that resonate with you in the...
Really well, and also very convicting. I definitely avoided conflict. I was definitely have a codependent personality, more of a people pleaser, approval seeker. So I didn't like and still don't like personal conflict. And it's funny because I'm an attorney, so for a living I handled conflict, disagreements, problems. But in my own personal relationships, I viewed conflict as, I'm going to avoid it. I don't like it. Makes me uncomfortable. I'm scared of it. And anger was one of those emotions that I expressed privately.
Can we examine this for just a second? Because of what you said, it triggers a thought. And I don't want to rabbit trail us too much, but it's just something that stuck out to me as you said that, is that as a litigator, your job was to deal with conflict. And then the first thing that came to my mind is, yes, and in a law environment, there is so much structure around how you fight. Like there's exactly rules and procedure, and in the end, there's an acceptance of the outcome, or at least what the next step is. If once an outcome is by a court is given, you either have the opportunity to appeal, or eventually you're going to get to, you have to accept this outcome, and this is the way it is. But it's almost as if in a litigation environment for courts, you've created a safe place to do conflict.
Really,
is what stuck out to me. It's like
really good,
and maybe it speaks to something about how we should be doing conflict, and then why Scazzero wrote How to Fight Cleanly is like, can you create a safe place to go through conflict?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. In my law practice, I could certainly state what was in the best interest of my client, and it was fine. It was respected. I was expected to do that. It was a safe place to do that. Man, in my personal conflicts, I just really...
There's no rules always, right?
Yeah, really struggled.
Well, there are, I'm guessing most families don't have written rules for how conflict is done.
Yeah.
And so what we see is implied rules, and and you see people who their implied rules are not safe rules at all. So you have all the yelling, screaming. You might even see physical abuse in these cases that is generally coming on the backside of anger. And that's why anger feels not as an emotion that helps us. It's something to be feared, I think, for many of us.
That's hitting a nail on the head for me. I think the issue is that I didn't feel safe. Yeah. I think that was where the fear came.
Yeah.
So I think that's correct. And so, where I'm at today is anger is an emotion that should be felt. And I believe there's healthy anger and I believe there's unhealthy anger. And then I think there's, what do I do with the anger? Where does that anger bring me?
So let's touch on that too for a second, because this is and I think even in a healthy anger environment. So let's go back to the court example now. Now that it's in my head and I think about it, is sometimes I don't like the anger thing because I'm going to have to face something about myself. So let's say I happen to be on trial, and yes, it's because wrong has happened, and I might have to face. So when somebody comes and addresses something where they feel wrong, there's anger potentially there. I might have to face something about myself and recognize, I acted inappropriately, and I don't want to face that all the time. And so even if it is a safe environment with all the rules on it, when the anger is pointed at you or the wrong is pointed at you, it doesn't feel good, right? Because for various reasons, you may have to face yourself. It's like, oh yes, I am this bad person. I can't imagine what it would be like to stand in a courtroom and have a jury say you're a murderer and you should be punished for a long time because of what you've done, because the feeling of shame and what would go along with that, of them basically saying you're really the worst of the worst in our society, and that needs to be dealt with. And in some ways, we all take on a form of that judgment when anger comes our way, and even in a healthy environment, because we may have to face where we've been wrong.
Right.
And so there's a reason to fear even in a safe environment, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. I went to the extreme, but I think it fits. You can take that all the way down to, yes, I'm the one that left the laundry in the middle of the floor and made the mess there, and I didn't clean it up. And I see you're angry, and I don't like being confronted, but yes, that's me. I was the one that did it. It's in the lightest examples,
Yeah. I think for me, it has to do with control. I think that when I feel like I'm out of control and I think something should happen a certain way, I'll get angry.
So I want to take this into the anger, into the cancer journey a little bit, because there's one difference here. Not one difference. There's a difference that's big in my mind, and that is, if you feel angry about your cancer journey, it's this idea of, we were just talking about, it's like, well, anger is the symbol of something is wrong. Who and what is it pointed at and why? Because it's not as if somebody gave you cancer. And it is true that somebody could have done something that, a corporation maybe did something that created a cancerous, environment, that then you're obviously your body has responded to that. And so I could see where anger could be pointed in that. But let's take your case. You have no known reason why you contracted cancer, and you're,
I didn't fit in any of the risk categories, and there's no genetic link yet that they know of. Right.
So anger, why does it make sense? And how does that connect to your cancer journey? And that's what I'm really kind of curious about.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before about shaking my fist in ICU after my 14th surgery, and
shaking your fist at who?
At God.
Yeah.
Being angry with him. Feeling like he had a plan for this health journey, and really nothing had happened that I thought should have happened. And then now is facing my death. demise. And I was like, well, what the heck was all that for? And I'm not ready to pass.
I got to think this is the biggest question for any cancer patient out there, is that because it can't be attached to a person, it's anger towards God. Why did you allow this to happen to me?
Yeah, sure.
Has to be like the biggest reconciling moment of anger in the grief cycle, because if God is all powerful, then that means he could have stopped this.
Right.
And he didn't.
Right.
And so reconciling anger towards God as having the power to stop this suffering and not is probably the biggest thing that I would say about anger. And this is that.
Yeah.
Is that
absolutely.
real for you in a big way? Because that's when you said you shook your fist. You shook your fist at God.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about how you processed it.
Which was a rare reaction for me.
To shake your fist at God?
Yeah, very. It's not something that I did at all that I can remember before that time. So I don't know how real I was, how authentic I was with God for most of my Christian walk. Yeah, I think I was more of a people pleaser with God. Like, oh, I have to make sure that I say the right words, do the right things. And then here I was standing up and saying, I'm really ticked off at you and I don't like what's happening right now.
This is earth-shattering. What you just said to me is earth-shattering, because what you said before was, I grew up as a conflict avoider because I feared conflict. And I'm going to say something that may sound almost sacrilegious, but my cancer journey brought me to a place of being real with God, and my realness expressed itself in anger.
Yes.
And that's such a big statement, because it shows, it does bring purpose to this journey. And it may not be the purpose that you want, but it brings purpose to the journey. It's like, prior to the reality, you weren't real with God as much real as you are now.
I don't consider it disrespectful what I did. I considered it, in fact, afterwards when I thought about it, having this response with God, I thought of it as like, not that I was on equal footing, but this was the created being saying to the creator, hey, I am unhappy about this. It was just real. It was more of a relationship. It wasn't so much, I'm just a big time people pleaser, whatever happens, happens. It was, hey, Lord, I have something to say about this. I want to be heard, kind of thing. And I think that was a unique place for me in my relationship with God.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put it in the disrespectful. Well, no, maybe I would. Shaking your fist at anybody might be viewed as disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'll back away from that a little bit, but not necessarily unhealthy in the sense of, I think, allowing real expression to flow that's happening inside of you into your physicality isn't necessarily a bad thing. You were able to be real about it, and the fact that you felt it doesn't make it wrong. And so that's why I don't think it's disrespectful.
It wasn't even so much a lack of faith. Like, I wasn't walking away from God. I was walking towards him, saying, this feels unacceptable to me. Like, something's really wrong here.
Yeah.
And you're on the throne. Yeah. So who else do I go to? I'm like,
there's nobody left to blame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And as I've said many times before, with all these emotions that poured out of me that some Christians may think show a lack of faith or is a sin, I never felt God disappointed with me ever. In fact, I felt like our relationship reached some new levels.
I like something you just said, is that when you entered into your anger, because you didn't say it as a we, you actually put it to yourself. When you entered into your anger, you were walking towards God. Not because you were going to literally take a swing at him. You were walking towards him with your questions.
Yeah, my palms were outward, but it was like, I am
No,
really
you have
upset.
One fist.
Well, that's, maybe the fist, maybe it unfolded a little bit, I hope. But anyway, it is what it is, right?
No, you were expressing the real.
I expressed what I felt.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about anger that's really good is, and why I think it's a big part of the grief process is learning how to express the real. What you just described in today's with your experience was you moved out of stuffing and false expression, codependent type behavior where you tell somebody what you think they want to hear to telling God what you actually do feel.
That's it right there.
And so I think that's the big change that happened on your journey. And I think it's why it's an important part of the grief cycle is it's moving you out of the false into the real. And that's such a great place to be, even when it hurts and when it's painful and when it's a negative emotion that you don't necessarily want to experience. For all the reasons we've talked today, it's moving towards the real. And so I love this idea as you're walking towards God, not walking away.
Yeah.
Well, when we think about that and we looked at how does this map into recovery, one of the things that we had on our list was principle 4 was examining our faults. Where in principle 4, we do an honest and spiritual, we call it a moral inventory. And so where we start examining our lives and we take time to write down people, places, things, events that have happened, their cause, their effect. And the big part is at the end, we list what our part is, where maybe we have done something that has caused harm to others or that we need to take ownership in our own life for.
Sure.
And when something happens to you that isn't your fault, you write in there, I have no part. And it's taking ownership of that too.
Yeah.
But these major events in our lives that shape us is a moral inventory that you would do in step 4 is very similar to this, is that you're taking some of the hard events in this case of your life and you're documenting those and you're putting those out there as an honest expression of this is what's happened. And this is what it's done to me in my life. This is the effects of that, the consequences, and I'm having to live with that inside of there. And in certain cases, our response to it, it's not that the event that happened, our response to it is what causes the most damage in our lives, is that we may move into bitterness or resentment and start causing harm to others because we're living out of bitterness. But the whole point of doing this inventory and walking towards God with our anger is so that you don't walk in bitterness, but that you actually express the real. Because in the next step that's on this list here, next principle that connects to the anger was the principle 6, which is forgiveness and amends process. And so writing our story and owning our parts in forgiveness help process the loss and the anger. And when we have a part, then we can actually express amends and forgiveness. And so I think what I wanted to come back to you was today you're some years away from the time where you shook your fist at God out of anger. And how did you walk through today to where your relationship's at? Because you did this.
Yeah. So it was very similar to the recovery process, except it happened in a journal as I was entering things about what was going on and really expressing my feelings on a linear basis as things were going on, happening, and I was recounting. I went ahead and sort of inventoried God, like what had happened. I did view God as being on the throne, and, what happened? Well, my cancer went from surgical solution cancer to a metastatic terminal cancer. And so I had to deal with, what response? Well, that had a huge response with me. It was, I'm going to pass. And, I had to deal with that. But, and so getting to what was my part, I think anger was my initial emotion, which needed to be expressed. I think if I tried to bury that, it would have been devastating to me. It would have turned into something else, maybe a severe depression or something else. But expressing the anger and then, looking at myself and saying, am I resentful? Am I bitter? Am I walking away from God? And I think for me, what came out in my journal was that no, I was walking towards God, but I was expressing those tough emotions, and anger happened to be one of them. So I did an inventory of where I was at. Did I need to confess anything to God? Did my character defects / sins, come out in this whole process? I mean, I have those intimate time. I had those intimate times with the Lord, which I do now, where I look through what I'm feeling and thinking and doing, and saying, Lord, if these are things that I need to confess, and with that, I didn't confess my anger to the Lord.
You expressed, not confessed.
I expressed it,
yeah.
And I did say things like, "Where are you, God?" and "You don't know what you're doing."
You don't. Well, where are you, God's interesting. You don't know what you're doing is an interesting expression.
Yeah,
yes,
that kind of a thing. But
I could do this better.
Yeah. Because control was a huge part of this whole process for me. But I didn't, I believe, cross any lines where I needed, like so many times I've had relationships where they didn't go the way I thought they should. And I dwelled in unforgiveness, resentment, and bitterness, and even held a grudge. That's something I work on in recovery, evaluating all my relationships, and then doing an amends and all that. But I didn't feel that I had gotten to that point with God, that I needed to do an amends with him. I do amends every day with the Lord on all kinds of things. But on that anger piece, I didn't feel that I needed to.
What I like about this is you're helping to clarify that this is a healthy...
Yeah.
Anger is a healthy thing. There's some wrong or hurt that's happening in your life. You've connected the fact that wrong and hurt exists. And you've also connected with there's a truth that's out there, is that God had the ability to stop it.
Yeah.
And inside of that, you feel a certain way about the fact that he didn't.
Yeah.
And you had to express that feeling to God, that, hey, I feel like...
And I think anger is linked in with lament a lot of times. Yes. And I think a lot of my anger was also sadness. I mean, we're going to get to sadness, but it was linked closely with that.
I think you're right.
I was super sad and just lamenting what was going on.
It's interesting that it's one of the 5 key steps or 5 key components in the grief cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So we see in the recovery that there's a process that you can do. And you and I think that when we are free to express the real, that there's a lot of healing that happens in that.
Yeah. I mean, here I was 53, 6 children, busy lawyer. And now my situation is that you're going to pass. And I didn't think I was going to leave the hospital. I had a 5% survival rate. And so I really had to deal with my own demise. And was I angry about that? Yes, I was angry about that.
So I'll do the Adam Young comment. It is, so if you haven't got to the point in your journey where you've expressed your disappointment, sadness, and anger, you probably don't have a healthy relationship.
Wow.
Because it's not in the real.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this and you have a cancer journey, the real is that you have sadness, disappointment, and loss in your life. And if you can't express the real, you may not have real relationship. And I think that's not meant to be too provocative. I think it's meant to, just as Adam Young's point is, like, it to encourage that it's okay to express the real emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean to take that past into something that's unhealthy in how you express or how, lashing out and doing things that are destructive behaviors. But real expression is a very healthy thing, because anger is a real emotion that once you feel it, it's not that you can't not feel something that's happened inside of you. You can stuff the feeling, you can cover it up, but it's a real thing that's happening inside of you that, and I think in many ways what you've done is give permission for us to, and not permission that we needed your permission, but your journey kind of expresses that there's a healthy side to this.
Yeah.
And by thinking about it in this way, it becomes something not to be avoided, but to be walking towards God with.
Yeah, and the how recovery is great is I feel anger, so I go into an inventory process to inventory what's going on
Yeah.
and to see what my part might be, if anything, and then evaluate all my relationships. One of them was with God.
Well, I think there's also a separate side of the amends, and God doesn't do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But and so I've kind of wrestled with this as a concept for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I have the words around, but I'll at least put this out there, is that because I've heard people say, "Hey, I needed to forgive God," and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, forgiveness kind of implies that you've been wronged,
Right.
and what I think most people mean when they say that is something along the lines to, I've come to an understanding that you weren't harming me, and I needed to release my whatever this is, anger, bitterness, sadness. I'm releasing that and no longer looking at you as harming me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to hold it against you any longer
Mm-hmm.
the way I might have, because you were the only one that could stop it. I'm no longer holding you.
Sure.
And so it's not that it was wrong, but it is, I'm
right.
no longer holding it against you that you
Mm-hmm.
could have stopped this and you didn't, even
Mm-hmm.
though it hurt.
Yeah, and I mean, for my life as I sit right now, 10 years later, and I see the incredible good that he's brought out of what was going on. And not only with being able to speak to people, encouraging them in their own journeys, but in my own life, in my own walk, in my own relationship with him, my relationships with others, my perspectives, taking me out of law, setting me on a whole new path. I mean, the goodness that came out of that was just amazing.
Yeah.
But at the time, it felt like great harm.
Yeah.
You're right. And that was a big wrestle. Was I know you do things in my best interest. You're all loving. You're all kind. You sit on the throne, but I still have to express this anger because
Yeah.
I'm upset. You're the only one I can express it to, because, yeah, I can be angry with somebody else, but they weren't responsible for me getting cancer.
Yeah.
What role did you play, Lord? And where's this going? And I know him to be all loving and all kind. So,
And this is the concept that we've talked about a bunch, that two things can be true at the same time, even though they look contradictory.
yeah.
They can be true at the same time. And so you
Mhm.
can be experiencing what feels like physical harm at the same time, something that's your greatest good. And it's just a very hard thing to put your arms around because we just don't see clearly. But we're learning to embrace the mystery. And I think that's
Mhm.
part of processing the anger and the grief side is.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing, is the enemy and the brokenness tries to destroy, right? And like I think about the character of Joseph in Genesis, where he's thrown into the pit and he's thrown way down in this pit, and he's stripped, and his brothers are talking about killing him, and one brother talks them into faking it and making it look like he was murdered by an animal, but selling him to this caravan going down to Egypt, right? And this was, if you could fast forward this thing, they thought they were done with Joseph. This great harm had been done to Joseph, right? And I think Joseph was a pretty arrogant guy. And so I think there were things in his own character that God was doing. So God was allowing things to happen. And then, of course, many years later, we know the story. He becomes second to Pharaoh, but he ends up saving all his brothers, the whole region, everything from a great famine.
And probably even himself, when you think about
himself too, yes.
Yeah, if that journey hadn't happened,
Yeah.
he would have died in the famine also.
Yeah, so if you just take that one event, you think, gosh, what's God doing?
Great
What's
harm,
the deal?
yeah.
Great harm. And I kind of feel like that in my own life, because I look at where I'm at now, and I know divorce and all that other stuff, but he has me in a place that I couldn't imagine being in any other place. It's a great place.
Yeah, and I think it wouldn't have been wrong for Joseph to feel anger at what had happened.
Oh.
Both at his brothers and even towards God, as to not stopping that. And so the expression or the feelings of anger wrong, and so
and
to process that
it
is
kept
such a
on
good thing.
going for him. I mean,
Yeah,
prison and
yeah,
years later,
betrayal, all kinds of
Yeah.
hard things, and so, but something happened in his heart by
Yeah.
where he was at, and so, yeah, I think this has been a good conversation into
Yeah.
this space of why processing anger, how it fits into recovery, and what that connection to your cancer journey. I think it's probably obvious how it connects to anyone's cancer journey also. So it's probably a good place to wrap for today, as we've done the
Sean.
second one of these. So
Great topic.
thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Okay. Thanks. Blessings.
Blessings.